My name is Matt Wilhelmi, and I'm the owner of Strategic Voyages Business Consultants. I'm also the author of Taboo Business Questions, What is Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth? And today I'm joined by Lisa Prusak. She is the CEO of Redstone Business Consulting Group. She and her team work with organizations to identify their North Star and lay a firm foundation for strategic growth through people and process. Thanks, Lisa, so much for joining me.
Thank you, Matt.
We were just talking about this food manufacturing company that's got, over 500 employees. They've got a central manufacturing warehouse and facility in Chicagoland, and they wanted to expand their operations. And what we have discovered through kind of unpacking this a little bit were three big issues that they were facing. Operationally and with their expansion, they had some turnover issues, and they had some process and procedure issues that were related to maybe the other two. And so in this episode, I'm really looking forward to talking with you about some cautionary tales. I would imagine with your 30 plus years background in leading organizations, consulting, your education, you're going to have some different stories of things that maybe just didn't go quite right for companies that had some of these same issues. So which one of these in your mind is like, man, I've got a great story for one of those issues? I'd love to get us kicked off with a good one.
Yeah, Matt, thank you. So, gosh, they're all really interesting. I think the turnover of the middle manager, let's take that piece first, because really, I think it's going to resonate with business owners, especially in today's landscape, right? I've got turnover. I've got people, it's like a revolving door, okay? And the cautionary tales here, or the strangeness of that and the feeling in the organization is, what's going on, right? I just don't understand. I feel like I'm a pretty good leader. I feel like I'm a nice person. This is going to like wander through people's minds, right? Why can't we keep people, and so on and so forth, right? And so the interesting piece of this, though, for leaders of companies or owners, is that these expenses don't fall on the P&L and the balance sheet and the financial statements, right? But they're real numbers that are kind of hidden. So this ties right back into that expansion. So let's say I've figured out how to expand, right? And my sales team is killing it, but I'm not seeing the revenue drop to the bottom line. And yet you have told me, hey, there's a problem with turnover. So at a minimum, turnover costs for one person are 3 times their annual salary. But again, it doesn't appear anywhere. It just is. And so this can really be a very expensive, situation. And the interesting thing was that I've had in the past. So I walked into an organization that was 29 years in business, and they wanted to expand, same scenario, okay, manufacturing. And yet when I asked about, what are your career ladders? What is your cross training? Where, how is the organization structured? Right back down to foundation. And I said, can I have the job descriptions? And so I was given a job description and said, this is the same job description for a chemist, whether I've been here as an intern or whether I've been here 15 years. And I said, okay, well, there's a big red flag, right? Because am I really going to be doing the same job as an intern that a 15-year experienced person is going to be doing, right? And so in that, it didn't really show me, if I was walking in as a in any layer of the organization, what do I need to come in with, right, from an experience point of view, and what am I going to be taught how to do? And is my growth within the company going to be planned out? And I'm going to understand, what do I need to contribute? What is going to be given to me from the company, and how's that going to work, right? So that speaks right into the caution here, is that then, because we don't have any of that in place, then what's going to happen is those people are going to come in, get as much training as they can get, and then they're going to exit within 12 to 18 months or less, right? And again, remember that expensive 3 times the person's out at a minimum, right? It's not everything. It's just at a minimum. It's a good, metric to throw out, right? Easy math. And yet, so now I've got this revolving door. So really, in essence, what I'm doing is I'm training the competition's workforce for them. Because I'm probably really awesome, right? And I probably have a really great product, and I have all this like secret sauce. And yet these people come in, they get the training, then they go out and they use it in my competitor, right? And so now I've just caused my differentiator to be minimized because I did that, right? And because I didn't realize how to solve that issue. And so that kind of ties in with the expansion piece and the turnover piece, and then leads right into your other part about processes, procedures, and tools and things, because your foundation is, how is the organization structured for growth? What are the roles and responsibilities? What's the accountability? What have I done? And because I don't have any of those things, wow, I've got this big turnover that's costing me so much money, right? And then it's costing a problem with culture, because then I've got engagement and commitment issues within the organization as well from the people that are still there. So
yeah, I would imagine that the issues tend to compound on each other, and
that's right.
they cause even more problem. Have you ever ran across a situation where a company like this, in this maybe not exact space, but had, you know, these aspirations of growth through a little bit of a shift in their operational model, but had some of these same issues, and kind of what happened?
Yes, I have. So what happened was, again, it was a very older company, family run, and few people wore many hats. So of course, when you're trying to expand and grow, you get to a certain point and you hit your head on the ceiling, And so maybe you solve one thing and you go, okay, we're going to expand into this area. We're going to chase this. We're at an income, a revenue level of this, and we want to get to, you know, a bigger revenue number. So we're going to expand in this way. So what happened was, because the foundation wasn't solid, and because we didn't have a big enough foundation to grow on, and few people wore many hats, they were really good at going after that one new thing, but then everything else suffered. And so guess what happened? They didn't increase their revenue, because now it was bright, shiny object. Everything else was in the background, because they didn't have a big enough foundation, right? And they didn't have enough people, and they didn't identify, when I do this from a growth perspective, I need to match my recruiting, teaching, and training to just in time, so that as I expand, I've got people that are trained that can take on the work, and I can afford to pay them. And then we go to the next level and the next level. And so really, we've created a situation where we're still hitting our head on the ceiling, and we can't move forward. And that was what happened with one of the organizations that I was working with. And so what we had to do was, we had to go back down to the basics and then rebuild it. And we can talk about solutions in the next segment. But you know, it's just a caution, because it's just going to cause issues within the organization, within the culture. And then you've got an engagement and commitment problem too. Right? So everybody's not happy to drive to work. Everybody's not excited to drive to work, and you're going to have more turnover, or you're going to have people that, even if they're really, really good employees, they don't have what they need to be successful. And so you're still not going to get what you want as the outcome, right? So those are all the little intricacy things where all these kind of tie in together that aren't working. But the issue is, it's costing you money, and so you're not able to move forward. You're not able to hit your North Star. And then you sort of have frustration throughout the organization at every level for different reasons. And then it's much harder to have conversations about issues and problems and how to process those in a way where everybody is in a safe space and feels comfortable sharing, because now everybody's thinking that they're going to get blamed. They're going to be the scapegoat. And that's a really scary place to be for a lot of people, right? And so then how are we going to solve these problems? Because now we don't trust each other either.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. You want to have a leadership team that's cohesive, you know, have some trust, have some camaraderie. And if one person's not carrying their weight, that's a problem for everybody. You know, one of the things you just said, Lisa, that I want to pick up on, you mentioned this inability to kind of multitask when you're wearing so many different hats. And I've seen that so many times in business. People say they're going to be able to do a lot of things, and everybody says they wear a lot of hats, and they probably do. But when they're so focused on one aspect. It's the shiny object. I sometimes call them shiny nickels.
Yep.
You lose so much momentum in other areas of your business. That's what happens when people aren't disciplined executioners of their strategic plan. You have to be disciplined. You have to have KPIs. You have to kind of have some of these accountability metrics in place to stay focused on that North Star without, totally losing everything else. And unfortunately, what happens in those situations, Lisa, is those companies go out of business because they get so focused, they forgot how they were making money in the first place. It's actually a topic I bring up in my book, Taboo Business Questions. Just a shameless plug here for a second. I do talk about finance. I talk about pricing in the book, and I actually call it revenue snobbery, which is where if you're so focused on this new, better revenue line item, you forgot what helped build your foundation, and you actually start to lose money out the back end because you're just so emotionally enamored with the potential for more revenue or the next thing or the shiny nickel. It ruins people's companies. And so I just, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think people need to hear that story more, and they need to have somebody like you in their corner to maybe help them create that plan, help them lay that firm foundation, and then help them stay focused, help them execute, and have some accountability. So that's great. We have time for maybe just one more story if you're interested in sharing, if there's any, other cautionary tales that come to mind. We've unpacked this particular business's case study and issues quite a bit, but I'm curious if there's maybe one more cautionary tale you'd like to, give our audience that maybe aligns with what we've been going over.
Sure. I think the interesting thing here, as far as the middle manager turnover and how they're selecting people within the organization, this happens a lot with many different organizations. It's like, hey, this person's been here the longest, so they're a manager. And we're not really putting managers through selection processes, and we're not really training them, right? It's just like, well, you've been here the longest, so tag, you're it, right? Which is what I'm hearing you say that happened in this company, and it happens in a lot of other companies. So that's an interesting thing to unpack, and to also want to take on more of a role. Like we said, few people are wearing many hats, but we're not allowing them to live into their subject matter expertise, because maybe they're really, really good at one thing, but because they've had to wear all these hats on these other things, they're going to go to their subject matter expertise, which is their preferred activity. And all the other things that they've been given to do are going to be secondary, because I either A, don't know how to do it, or don't like to do it because it's not really my area, which includes managing. And so that's an interesting piece to me for us to consider when we build some solutions for this at the end.
Yeah, Lisa, I'm really interested to get into the solutions, which we'll touch on in just a second. Before we get there, I want to ask you a little bit about your education. And I'm not going to ask, there's no like pop quiz here, but you do have a background in industrial and organizational psychology. You have a master's degree. Some people might not really know what that is. We don't have to get into every single aspect of it, but what I'm most interested in is to hear maybe how that education has helped maybe develop some of these selection tools or some of these abilities to kind of see that problem and then have kind of the toolbox ready to go, which again, we'll jump into solutions here in the next episode. But I'm really curious if you've realized, with your background, with your experience, but now with that education that you have, how that's been able to play into some of the people side of the business too.
Thanks, Matt. It does play into the people side, and it plays into the organization side as well. So industrial organizational psychology. So we like to say the I side is really about the selection, some of the human resource elements, not only from a compliance standpoint, but also from a training and development standpoint, and those career ladders and that type of thing, which marries very nicely on the other side to the organizational design of a company. So really then you're looking at the actual organization, the org chart, the way that it's filled out. Is it top down? Is it, what needs to happen? How does it need to be built out, right? That's the organizational side. What's interesting about IO psychology in particular is that it is a STEM science and it's research driven. So all of these things, you're reading all of the research and you're reading the best practices, but it's not just that ivory tower idea. It's actually rooted in research with companies, organizations, people, how's it going, and data from years and years and years, right, of why this works, why this doesn't work, and so on, which is super interesting and fascinating to me. And then again, on that I side, you know, you've got your assessment tools for behaviors that kind of show up. You have, you know, which may predict, right? So this person has, you know, this type of education, this type of background, this type of behavioral assessment. I can predict they're going to be good at this. We're going to have to train this. You know, they have this type of education and so on. And it gives me a picture of the person that I can help when I have on the other side identified the roles and responsibilities within the greater organization, and I can make a good fit between the two of them. And when I'm able to do that, wow, now we're off to the races. And so the education background really helps to say, these are best practices, but you know what? Here's why. Because we've done all the research, and so we have all the data so that we can have good predictors, right? And when we understand the behaviors of others, and we understand how to support leadership and their behaviors, and middle managers and so on, and their behaviors with tools and training and teaching and coaching, well, wow, now we can really speak about organizational health, occupational health, work-life balance, which really speaks into the culture. And that's all the background of that whole program for people who decide to go get a master's or a PhD. And it's really fascinating because it does wrap up everything that you do from a finance and accounting perspective, and it marries it into the people perspective. So it really gives a nice balance of how to support leaders and owners in organizations. And so I really, really am very appreciative of the education because of that. And so it's something that I value very much.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that about the IO world in general. And then, you know, your background specifically, it's really fascinating. So just to kind of recap, you know, this particular case study before we move over to the solutions, we got a food manufacturing company that has about 500 employees. They're looking to kind of expand through some different operational channels, and their North Star, as we've, you know, come to find this term and love this term, they really want to grow, and it would result in 6x their annual revenue. But they're facing 3 issues. And so we'll unpack these 3 issues with solutions in the next episode. But just to make sure everybody's on the same page, expansion with operations, there's some issues there. They've got some turnover issues, and there's some issues with some process and procedures, specifically with their training, development, talent selection, and that kind of thing. So Lisa, thank you again for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your solutions here in the next episode.
Thank you, Matt. My pleasure.